I'm Jaffe, David Jaffe. You may know me from God of War, Twisted Metal, a bunch of Sony games. Now, at present, I'm working with the folks at Movie Games there in Poland. I'm one of the creative consultants on their board, working on amazing cool games like the Lust from Beyond series. We're working on Fire Commander. We're working on Winter Survival Simulator. Man, it is awesome. I'm having a freaking blast working with these guys. And here's the thing. They come to me and they say, hey, Jaffe, why don't you do the keynote for Digital Dragons? But here's the thing. These keynotes, man, I mean, especially the digital ones, they don't feel real, right? And it's so hard. You're sitting at home, you're working, your kids are running around. But I'm grateful, don't get me wrong. I'm grateful to be asked to, hey, come do the keynote. I appreciate that, you know? Haven't had a hit game, in 15 years, but sure, ask me. Why not? I'll show up. I will tell you, though, yeah, I'm a little like, There's two reasons. One is these things never work. I've given these rousing speeches before. Who cares? Doesn't move the needle. Remember this one? This is from Chris Crawford, one of the great original game designers of computer games. Look at this fucking thing.
The characters in our games are like a cardboard box with a picture of a face pasted onto the front, but nothing inside. For art!
Nobody cared. Nothing changed. He's still out in the woods of Oregon or wherever he is, trying to make his point and prove that games are this or that. Nobody cares. You come here to network, right? You come here to somebody that you like in the office. You can't do that these days, but that's what this is. You drink. I know what these are. I've been to these. I'm going to do this talk now. I don't know what it'll give you. I don't know what you'll take away from it, but you're sitting there, you're comfy, you're in your own home, you're in your bed, you're in the bathroom probably on your phone. That's great. That's where I like to be with you, right there in the bathroom. I think here's the thing. Here's what it is. Everybody's on their own journey. It doesn't matter that we're all in the same business. It doesn't even matter that we're fans of a lot of the same games. What motivates you, what moves you, what drives you is so different that I could give you a rousing speech. I really could. I'm good at that. I could do that. And I could rant, and I could get covered in the press, and Jaffe calls for, who cares? It doesn't matter. Practically speaking, if you look at, historically, none of these great rants we've read about in the past from GDC and various conferences like this one, none of them move the needle. Money moves the needle. That, right? Come on. The fact that is still employed and hasn't been run out of town on a rail. It's clear money moves the needle, and that's it. But anyway, these are going to be some observations, some life lessons, what have you, from a joyfully apathetic ex-game developer after over 20 years in the business. Let's just get started. Let's start right now. I think therapy should be required if you're going to work in the business. If you have a professional company that is insured and all that, I think you should absolutely require your employees, including you, to have at least a therapeutic checkup every year. And there's a lot of brilliance in this industry. There's a lot of creativity. There's a lot of love. There's a lot of passion, which is wonderful. And a lot of that does come from pain, undiagnosed pain that you're working your way through. I get that. I get the value of it. But certainly at an executive level or a manager level, and maybe all up and down the chain, I think you need some therapy. The number of choices that get made by, let's just take these big fucking companies, whether you're talking layoffs, whether you're talking who to partner with, to do business with, that might be kind of not the nicest group of people, the kind of way you choose to extract money from your customer. There's a lot of shady shit that's clearly driven by insecure people who haven't really done mental work on materialism and dealing with the fact that they really think money and success and accolades is going to fill some hole that they have. If you don't come to the job and your shit's not clean, I've seen it, man. It's that you will become one of those people that are just an asshole, and you're cruel, and you allow things to happen in your organization, like all the toxicity and sexual harassment. Let's take there literally are reports where assistants to the heads of these companies or heads of departments were saying, guys, there's a lot of bad crap going on here. And apparently they just let it keep happening because the people that were doing this awful stuff were making the companies a lot of money. Now, if you had gone to therapy, come on, man. You gone to therapy, you work your shit out, you go, you know what? I love money, man. I want to buy that boat. I want to send my kids to that fancy prep school. I do it. Maybe I'll find a way to do it. I'm not going to do it on the backs of exploiting people. I'm not going to do it on the backs of allowing people to come to work and feel unsafe. or just disrespect it. It's like, if the only way, I mean, you might as well join the mob at that point. If the only way you can make your money is doing it through nasty, shady ways, there's easier ways than video games to make the ducats, baby, and go to the therapy. I've been doing games for, I guess I was right out of college of 21, 22 was my first job. This is the year I've seen a couple of mentors die. You're in this long enough and people start to go. I guess the grab bag of wisdom here for you, if you would like to use it, say thank you to the people who helped get you where you are. And I'm sure there are quite a few of them. This year, the great, sadly late Kelly Flock passed. What a guy, man. I mean, anybody who was gaming on PlayStation back in the 90s and early 2000s, you benefited from his wisdom, from his ideas, from his passion, from his humor, from his drive, from his inspiration. The guy was always there with a phone call. Anytime I called him, he was there with advice. He was always willing, always helpful, always a good guy. And he didn't take any shit either. This is the last conversation I had with him, and I am so grateful I got to have it. Listen to this. This is from a stream I did recently. All right, well, look, Kelly, thanks for the time. And let me just say, you know, and you know this, whatever. There's like 3 people that are key responsible for my career, and you're one of them. So I just want to say thank you for that. You really did. You and Alan and one other person really did give me a career, and I appreciate it, man. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Save it for the eulogy.
Oh, shut the fuck up, dude. Shut the fuck up. And he's gone now. Send the flowers, send the thank you note, just send a text before it's too late. Because as we get older in this business, before you know it, it'll be too late. Designers. This is just for designers and writers. This is so crucial. I want to talk about writing in video games. One of the reasons I lost a lot of energy to do narrative-based games after God of War is I'd often say, this commercial right here,
Hi, I am your grandpa.
that commercial usually, if I watch it on TV and I don't know it's coming, will make me cry. I'm an easy cry. I am very emotionally vulnerable to media. Video games rarely do it. And I'm getting tired of hearing about how great the writing is getting in video games. I'm getting tired of seeing games awarded for great writing when they're not writing specifically for the medium. This medium, and I'll give you some examples in a second, so I'm not going to just give you hyperbolic bullshit. This medium is capable of storytelling in a way that we have never had in the I know it sounds crazy, in the history of man. Okay? The way a story can hit you when it is done through interactivity, through play mechanics, not to mention, which I'll give you an example in a minute, metaphor, like literary devices through mechanics. And yet, this is what we bring up when we talk about great moments in video game writing.
You're gonna be okay, baby. Stay with me. I'm gonna pick you up. I know, baby. I know it hurts. Come on, baby. Please. I know, baby. I know.
Nothing's wrong with those. Those are great. Incredibly well produced. I'm not mocking them. But let me show you what actual video game writing is on the off chance. I don't want to be like presumptuous, but let's just assume you don't know. Or let's say you're a programmer, you don't think about this, you're an executive or whatever. This, if you care about the medium, not just the money the medium makes you, but the medium, this is the beacon, this is the North Star, and so many of us are ignoring it. Look at some of these examples. Okay, the first time I ever saw this sort of metaphor and storytelling and play mechanics was this game, September 12th. It's a little flash game, and all it is you have one button and you move the cursor around this Middle Eastern village, bazaar, what have you, and you drop bombs on the terrorists, and at least you try to. And that's it. That's all you can do in the game, and there's no win condition. There's no lose condition. All it is, though, as you can see, whenever you drop bombs, you kill not just the terrorists, but you kill innocents. And the innocents gather around the other innocents, like their family and friends, who are dead, and they start crying. And then, lo and behold, after a couple of seconds, they become terrorists themselves. And you can't play this game without, through mechanics, understanding and appreciating it's not the world's deepest message, but it's a pretty fucking good one, and it's much more effective when you encounter it through gameplay versus watching it in a cutscene that's very on the nose. All right, this is obviously a very abstract game as well. It's called Loneliness. All it is you move this little cursor, this little block, up and down, left and right, across this white landscape. And there are these other little dots that visually are identical to you. However, you can't get close to any of them. Every time you try, they run away. And you can go backwards, which I'm doing right here. You can't really tell. And you go backwards and they're not there anymore. And so you keep pushing forward and the patterns change. And sometimes it seems like you can get closer and closer and almost touch them, but you never actually can. And the whole game obviously is a metaphor for being lonely. And all of that comes through gameplay. And when you play it and you experience it, it's way more powerful than watching it in a cutscene. And I can tell you firsthand that if you play this and it catches you at the right time of day, at the right time in your life, where you're feeling kind of melancholy and whatnot, this is a pretty sad fucking game. It's kind of heartbreaking. You feel for the dot, because the dot obviously is you. All right, let's move on from the abstract, though, because this is not just sort of arty-farty stuff. This stuff can happen and should happen in more commercial games. To me, this game, which I'm sure a number of you have played, it's brilliant, it's Inside. It is one of the best examples and one of the most just powerful examples of storytelling through gameplay and messaging and metaphor and meaning through gameplay, because you literally are forced to experience the humiliation, the sensation, the tragedy of conformity, but you only can survive this section if you conform. Previously in the game, you've been running and swimming and controlling objects like submarines and things, and now the only way you can get past this section is to become one of these sort of zombie humans that clearly is not in a good place in their life. And as a mechanic, there's nothing to do here except at the right time push the stick forward, and then when you get into the yellow zone, you hit the jump button and you jump. And ultimately, it's fascinating because it really does, at least for me, it made me start to think about, there are times in life, which I despise this is true, but it's true, where you have to conform if you want to survive, whether that's in business or actual real life is obviously, your mileage may vary, but I just thought this was brilliant. But they are hard. I've tried to make games where they've been in there before, but they're hard. It's really hard. And part of it is we don't think about it. We don't train our writers. We don't train ourselves as designers to think about this as being important. Instead, we're looking to Robert McKee. We're looking to, save the cat and all this Hollywood wonderful linear narrative lessons, but we're a different thing than there. We're a different beast than they are, We need to be looking at the people who have gotten it right and figure out how can we do that in a bigger way, And the other part of it is I don't know if it's insecurity. I don't know where it's coming from. I'm starting to see this in the last 10 years at some of the great design schools. Obviously, USC is one of them, but I don't see it enough. I don't see enough people learning that the medium. I was an English major at USC, and we took apart text. We took apart the Scarlet Letter, and we took apart Wordsworth and Leaves of Grass, and like, what does it mean and what could it mean? And it didn't matter if we were right, if the author came back to life and said, oh, that's what I meant. That was almost irrelevant. What mattered was, are you able to take this text? Is this piece of art rich enough that you can find a way in that resonates with you? right? And the richer the piece of art, the more resonant that it is, and the more impactful it is to a larger number of people. Well, I want to show you this game, which out of all the games, if you would have given me like, a test and said, I'll pay you $1 million, if you pick the game that you play this year, that will be the richest in metaphorical storytelling. There's no way I would have picked this game, Desperados III. It's a great game, but I want to show you some stuff. This is a straight up commercial title. It's Desperados III, one of my favorite games of the year. It is a isometric strategy game, very much in the vein of old school games like Jagged Alliance and Commandos and whatnot. Just brilliant game. But that aside, though, this is the final boss. And as you can see, you are... that's you as the cowboy there, and then that's your enemy who you've been tracking the whole game in the pink hat. And his bad guys are surrounding you, right? And they're basically like, look, you guys have to have a showdown. If you pull out your gun, he's faster than you, he'll kill you. And so the whole story of the game, of like 15 missions, has really been about this guy, Cooper, the main guy, who really is kind of a loner and wants to try to do everything on his own. And ultimately, he starts to rely on this band of outlaws and friends and whatnot that he's pulled together. And the only way to win this mission, it is a very hard boss to kill because you have to have that moment in your brain that clicks where you go, oh my God, I have to shoot all of these enemies at the same time. And once that clicks and you go, oh, I have to use all of his friends and him, because you get one shot at it and you can't miss, and you have to do it at the same time. And it is such a satisfying feeling, not just from a game solve standpoint, but from a standpoint of going, holy cow, the message of the game, the story of the game, which is about no man is an island, is literally expressed through the way you complete the game. So the character Cooper arrives at the completion of his character arc. At the same time, you arrive at an experiencing of his arc through gameplay. It's fucking brilliant. And this game, I don't know how much of this was intentional, by the way. I'm telling you, the characters, right? This is a character named Kate. She's a woman who is, obviously check her out. She's badass. But what's really fascinating is the very nature of playing her, even though she really is one of the most powerful characters in the game, is not because she shoots and fights and all that, but her real power comes from being a traditional feminine type of character. She dresses up, she flirts with the guys, she can distract the guys, and then she kills them while they're distracted. She's incredibly powerful and lethal. And it's interesting to me that this mechanically speaking, the game is saying something about women. They're tough and capable, but they're not giving up what makes them women in order to be able to stand toe-to-toe with the men. It's really interesting. Another one is this character, Isabella, who is this kind of voodoo woman that joins the team late in the game. And she has the coolest powers in the game. She can take over people's minds and control them. She can link two people up. Whatever happens to that one person will happen to the person that's linked up. Most powerful character in the game. Only African-American character in the game that you can play. What's fascinating about this is that the very nature of how her mechanics work, at least the way I played it, made it so that more often than not, she was kind of off on her own. She went in and scouted ahead. She went and prepped a bunch of the scenarios that the rest of the more traditionally functional team could deal with. And almost every mission that she was in, there were those moments where I had to sort of realize, oh shit, she's off by herself. I need to pull her back in to be with everybody else. And there is a sense of, oh, interesting. The one black character in the game, the one African character in the game, is the one that is othered and separated from the white people. Now, again, I don't know how deep this went when they made this game, and I wasn't looking for this. I was looking for a strategy game, but I couldn't help but experience it while I played it, and it was incredibly powerful and satisfying. Whether they intended it or not, doesn't matter. It's there. And the more we train ourselves as consumers, as creators, as educators at the design school level to think about this stuff, the more we will start seeing it infused in the interactivity, and the greater the medium will become until it really does become the greatest medium in existence. The next one is Be Aware. Be aware of your...
Hey, listen, I'm
Really quick, Digital Dragons doesn't know I did it. Movie Games doesn't know I did it.
I have to tell somebody this.
6 months ago, I ran into Shigeru Miyamoto in Las Vegas. Man's a freaking genius. Mario, Zelda, you know who he is. Totally pioneer the industry, one of the best video game designers ever, if not the. He pulled me aside. He says, Jaffe, I'm in real trouble. I said, what's wrong? He says, listen, I just have to tell you something. I have to tell you the secret to making great video games. I don't know if I'm going to survive much longer because they're after me. I said, who's after you? He says, just shut up, fucking listen to me. And he told me, I don't know if I'm going to be here much longer. If I go vanishing, let my kids know I love them. And please, for the love of God, this is the most important lesson to the keynote. This right now is... I have to go. Look, this is the most important lesson. This is how to make video games. This is the secret right here. Oh shit. This is what Miyamoto said to me. This is what he said. I got another one. This is for the designers, the creatives, sometimes the artists, but certainly like the folks who direct the games or are lead designers on games. Here it is. Why in the fuck, unless you are guaranteed a seat at the captain's command table or even the captain's chair itself, why would you be in AAA? It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous at this point. Times have changed so much. The ability to express your own vision through interactivity is so much easier now. When I started, you either had to know how to program or you got a job as a tester and worked your way up to a producer. And hell, they didn't even have designers at Sony when I started. That wasn't even a job title they hired for. But now the idea of I want to be a designer, I want to be a director, I want to express myself, I want to be the next Cory Barlog, the next Miyamoto, the next Neil Druckmann. Why the fuck would you pound the pavement to get into eventually a big AAA studio where you're going to have very little input for a very long time, just so you can work with the big toys, just so your set pieces can be grander, versus going, I'm going to learn Unity, I'm going to learn Game Maker, I'm going to learn the core engine, I'm going to learn Unreal, I'm going to find some buddies on the internet, and we're just going to make shit. I mean, look at some of these games. Now, these are some of the best games I've played in a long time. These are not big productions, and they don't need to be. All the games that you're seeing here were made by teams of, at most, 5 people, and at the least, 1 person. I get it. Look, when I was a kid, the only movies I wanted to make when I was like a teenager and stuff were the big budget Spielberg movies, okay? But I didn't have anybody to pull me aside and say, hey, Jaffe, if you really love the medium of filmmaking, if you love the medium of film, of cinema, budget's almost irrelevant. It's about story and character and visual language, cinematic visual language. You can do that with almost no budget. You can do that with no budget. And you get to rule the roost. You don't have to have your creative vision gatekept. In that same mentality today, finally, that applies to video games too. Even more so, really. And I guarantee you, as these budgets go up on these AAA games, the entry level, if you're talking about first party kind of stuff, you're talking 140 million, give or take. But these days, it's well above 200 million for a lot of these things. Come on, man. By the time you get your shot, and you're going to get less and less of an opportunity than I got, because the number of these games you can see are getting less and less. They're not making as many as they were back in the past. Check it out. This is 1996's published games from Sony first party. You had 49 games that year. 2005, this is that list. You had 39, 10 less. 2015 rolls around, you're looking at 11 first party games. And then last year, 2020, there was only 9. Shit's getting more expensive, and they're making less of these things. Not just Sony, all the big AAA companies making games. So it's going to take you more time to get a seat at one of those tables because there's not as many tables as there used to be. Or during that time, you could have made your own games instead. You could have gone on and made a huge name for yourself in the AA space, the indie space. And then, yeah, eventually maybe Naughty Dog or Sony Santa Monica or the Collective calls you and says, oh, hey, we've been a huge fan of your indie games. Would you like to maybe consider directing one of our next big titles? Kind of like what you see happening with Kevin Feige and the Marvel directors. Most of those directors are hired for these big tentpole movies after they've done some interesting work. You work your way up to director by making shit, and then people say, I want you. And each time, assuming you want to play with bigger toys, those opportunities present themselves if you're good. All I will say is, when you look at the crunch, which really isn't, I mean, it gets better depending on the company, but it's money, baby. It's competition. It's capitalism. It's going to be the way it is. You're not going to solve that. You're not going to unionize because you can outsource. Being away from your family, crunching, affecting your health, all the harassment stories we're hearing, the layoffs after you give your heart and soul to one of these games, and then, 5 quarters up, got to lay you off so Bobby Kotick can make a big fucking bonus, but here's a gift card to BlizzNet or BattleNet, where the fuck it's. Come on, man. I'm not saying don't go into AAA, but right now, if you go into AAA and you are one of those people that want to be a storyteller through interactivity primarily, or a game designer, it's the equivalent of saying you want to be an author. And instead of just writing all day, all night, whenever you can, you go to the factory that makes the books and you're like, I'm going to figure out how the spine, I'm going to do the gold leaf on the spine, and I'm going to worry about the glue. I'm going to work at the company that makes the glue that holds the pages together, because that's what you're going to be doing for a long time. You go to one of these companies, $200+ million games, where they've got staff who've been there for a long time who are getting their shot. You ain't sitting in the captain's chair. If you're an artist, they're going to be like, hey, work on you're doing rust on all the tires for the game. You're specializing in making materials for the models. And I know a number of people who love that work, but it's not like they're expressing themselves and their sort of artistic vision of the world. You know, if you're a junior designer, it doesn't mean you don't have any input, but you're not going to be sitting there expressing your vision. You're going to be going, how do I tune this gray map area of level design to make sure that the jumps are actually achievable based on feedback from the QA team? So you got to be a certain kind of crazy these days to go into AAA, or you have to have a very specific thread the needle career plan. But most people who go into AAA these days, or most people who go into games these days who want to be creatively satisfied, and they want to be one of the key people driving the car down the road, determining how you drive it, where it goes, you don't want to be in AAA anymore. Go build your name. Then wait for them to call you. And if they never call you, who gives a shit? You've gotten to make the games you want to make. Creative freedom, baby. I've been doing this for a long time. Creative freedom trumps money. Assuming you have enough to eat. I'm not being a moron. Like, I'm starving, but I got my creative freedom. You know what I'm saying? All right, there you go. That's a lesson for you. Do with that what you will. This one's really quick. Awards. We should stop giving awards in this industry. As a guy who's won a bunch of awards, including the top awards, and as a guy who's been on pretty much every committee at some point or another nominating candidates for the awards, it's bullshit. Not everybody plays all the games.
That's truth.
It's easy to manipulate the votes, not in terms of like computers and stuff, but in terms of politicking and things.
That's truth.
Even on very specific categories. I was on a Best Director category once for a very prestigious award. I'm not going to name it. Literally, we spent an hour on the phone and on the Google shared doc, whatever it was, going back and forth about what even Best Director meant. And there were people who were like, oh, let's give it to this big production because that's a lot to direct that. Some of us were going, yeah, but that's producer. To wrangle that, Best Director should be someone who had a vision that was unique and they were able to execute it working with the team in a way that pushes the medium forward. No, that's design, right? And then some of these big categories, I won't name them either, some of these big awards, they don't even have design awards. Think about that. The core of this industry is interactivity. And they don't even think to have an award. Sometimes they'll mix it together with game direction and design, with totally different things. Or you'll have art direction awards that are given out for a game that's pretty. Best art direction should not be prettiest game. Best art direction should be a game that expressed visually the heartbeat of the game, the essence of what the game was. Its visual language was able to bring to life the thematic of what the game really was trying to get you to feel better than any other game. Now, I like Jeff Keighley's show, the Game Awards. I just get rid of the awards part. Just say, look, here are the 10 games that we're going to celebrate this year that really we feel represented the industry at their best. And don't have them compete, because it's a great show and it's getting better every year. But this idea of awarding creative work, awarding work that fundamentally, almost by definition, is subjective, is just, it's antiquated. It belongs in the dustbin of history. We as an industry should be more forward thinking. let's be clear on this one. I'm not trying to be a dick. And I love journalism. I love good journalism. I think reporters are, if I wasn't an agnostic or atheist, I'd say they were doing the Lord's work. Good reporting is crucial, incredibly important to our freedom. But that doesn't mean reporters are above scrutiny. Video game reporters, some of them are really good actually, but they should be doing a better job, and we should, as consumers of their products that cover our industry, we should demand they do a better job. Let me tell you a couple examples. There's an executive, very powerful, one of the most powerful executives in the industry, who was brought on stage and interviewed by a wonderful journalist. I love this guy. I've talked to him numerous times throughout my career. And this is a guy who gets a lot of bonuses where even his shareholders are starting to go, maybe you don't deserve that particular amount of ducat. This is a guy who's laid off a lot of people and still had record profits. This is a guy who has capitulated to certain countries when they have said, you know, we want you to express your company's product this way. He's been like, well, okay. And these are countries that are doing some nasty things. And this is a guy who has overseen a company that is apparently, according to the state of California, rife with harassment, toxicity. So he gets this guy, this was recent, a couple months ago. He gets the guy on stage. He doesn't ask him pretty much about any of it. Think about that. And when he was called out on it, he says, well, I'll never get him back again if I ask him about that stuff. Who gives a shit? This goes back to the therapy we talked about at the beginning. You're a genuinely good reporter. It would be like having bin Laden. Not that I'm attributing or equating them to, but it would be like having like someone who's nefarious, you know, and you're interviewing them. And it's like, well, I don't want to ask them the mean stuff or the stuff that might make them uncomfortable, or I won't get to interview them again. Who cares? Who do you serve? You serve your customer. Your customer is not going to be better served because you basically have become a PR mouthpiece to this executive. They're going to be better served because you let the world know this individual's, and he could be totally innocent of all the things a lot of people think he's done that are not illegal, but just kind of slimy. He could be innocent of it. But your customers are better served if we are able to hear the response from that individual. Everything from that to Kotaku, they came out recently, and again, I don't know anything about this guy's new company or anything about it, defending it or attacking it. You guys know I want diversity in the industry. I think it's a very important thing. But to go after this group because this picture was released and there's only white dudes in it. I'm not saying they shouldn't have had it reported on, but you don't get to do that and also not make it clear why this could be happening, right? A lot of times you hire people when you're especially a startup and you're putting your own money on the line and you're having people move from all over the fucking world to work with you and they're taking a risk, and you got a great programmer that you've worked with and he's like, hey, I worked with this guy over at Activision or High Moon or wherever 3 years ago and he was a fucking beast. He was amazing. He was awesome. Yeah, he was my roommate when we first met in college, blah, 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 whatever. But yeah, he's a goddamn beast. Well, are you going to hire that guy? Or you're going to go, it's like, well, let's take 3 months to try to get a diversity hire first. And it's like, yeah, but if that happens, this guy may be gone. You're going to risk that? I'm not saying we shouldn't figure out a solution. But if you're a journalist and you're writing that story or you're breaking that story and you don't also include the work involved with going, here's another, again, you don't owe both sides to everything. But there's a lot of these cases where these companies want to just stand on a soapbox and virtue signal. And again, they're bringing up important things. Sexual harassment, crucial. Unionization. Is it possible? I don't know, but it's an important topic to have a conversation about. Hey, here's some more sexual harassment in business. Here's some worker exploitation in the business. Here's worker exploitation and sexual harassment. And then there's whatever this company's doing. But in a case like this where you're basically really kind of accusing or almost accusing a company of being shitty because they don't have people of color, women, whatever else you may or may not see missing from that photograph, without also making it clear this could also be what's going on, so that the audience can go, okay, there is actually an interesting problem here. Is that how does this company who knows because there isn't diversity at a meta level, of course they haven't come across a great black programmer necessarily in this particular case, because there's a lack of acceptance and willingness to bring people of color into the engineering aspects of games. I get that, and that should be called out, and we should solve that. But that's a problem that this startup doesn't. They're just trying to survive, and they're like, okay, that is a problem. We should work on that. But suddenly they should risk their entire startup just so this website doesn't get upset with them. I think that's ridiculous. I think we have to find a way to do both, and reporters should be better. One more thing on. Look, I'm in a position of where I don't really give a fuck. So this was a section that we're deciding to cut. To be honest with you, it's just a little too spicy for a kind of a Digital Dragons or any kind of professional convention. There you go. That's the gosh darn truth. But I'll tell you what, it gives me an opportunity to tell you two important things. If you want to see the whole video, if you want to see what I'm really talking about here, which is totally just my opinion, and I think we were all good with the idea that we didn't want this particular opinion associated with movie games, because they don't necessarily agree with this, and certainly not Digital Dragons. I respect that. Everybody is entitled to their own opinion. But if you want to see what I have to say about this subject, which I won't even tell you what it is, go to my YouTube channel, search David Jaffe on YouTube. That's number one I want to tell you. Number two I want to tell you is drink lots of water. I don't know why, but that just seems like the nice thing to tell you. I hope so far you're enjoying the keynote. Let's press on, shall we, pal? So one of the last things I'll say, in closing, yes, is I think you need to know when it's time to get off the stage. And you need to be okay with that, okay? I'm not saying, I think it's great older people are staying in the business. I think there's a number of game designers I know who say they're going to stay in it until they die. And they expect to live long lives, which is great. But it's not for everyone long term. It certainly wasn't for me. And it took me a while to realize I was done. Now, I love what I'm doing now. I love streaming and making videos and talking about games and consulting with companies about games. I love games now more than I ever have. Maybe I loved them more when I was a kid with my Atari, but certainly teenage and on, I haven't loved games as much since then as I do since I stopped making them. I've become a fan again. And frankly, I just wasn't happy. I am so much happier now because I realized I was done. And it's hard because I had enough success that I kept getting these great opportunities. The last opportunity I founded with Nick Conanellis, the Bartlett Jones Supernatural Detective Agency. I had the perfect team, the perfect office. We had a great conceptual gimmick. It was just delightful. It was a wonderful time in my life. Great people to work with. But I wasn't plugged into the zeitgeist anymore. I cared. I worked my ass off on that game, and I loved the game, Drawn to Death, even though it bombed. Still very proud of it, proud of the team. But there were so many signs, man, that I should have been done. Even our shooting, it's a shooter, a third-person shooter. If you haven't played it, not many people have. I in the past, I would have been over backwards. I would have hired 20 consultants under the table. Get somebody from Call of Duty in here. I don't give a fuck if we have to pay him, in cash so he doesn't get in trouble or she doesn't get in trouble. I just want to know how to make our shooting better. I was obsessed. I wasn't obsessed on this one as much. I was more obsessed with the business at large. Like, how can we grow? How can we build to be acquired? I loved the game, but especially after it came out, we had a couple other opportunities. And one of the opportunities we did it, and we started working on it. And then something happened. It wasn't our fault, but it was a publisher thing where they pivoted and they said, yeah, we can't keep funding this. Now, in the past, I always looked at Tim Schafer as kind of the poster boy of tenacity. That guy's come so close to having brilliant classic games canceled, and he's just fucking stuck it out and figured out how to keep that thing alive. That's what you do when you are meant to continue to stay on that particular stage. But for me, I didn't have it in me anymore. I just did. And I don't mean that like it's a sad thing. I don't mean that like, oh, isn't that tragic? It's like, no, that's just growth, and it's hard to recognize your need to grow and change when you are surrounded by the accoutrement of your success, whether that's your own personal success or your financial success or media created success or whatever. Here's what I thought. I thought when Bartlett Jones shut down, here's exactly what I thought. I fully expected, it's like, okay, I'm going to go take a walk on the beach and I'm just going to break down, and I'm going to be okay with breaking down. I'm going to cry, and I was going to just mourn and grieve. And I didn't. And I tried. And finally it was just like, oh, I'm okay being done, at least in that capacity with video games. I laid my bricks. I built some great stuff with some great teams, and now I'm happy doing something else. And so I guess my point in bringing it up at a video game conference is that whether or not that's about wanting to change jobs, you feel like you've earned a bigger seat at the table, a more powerful voice on the team, and you're not getting it. And so you think about changing jobs, or whether that's about, in my case, like maybe not being in the industry in the same way anymore, or maybe it's about, you really don't like programming, but you want to design, whatever it is, whatever that leap is. I can just tell you there were signposts along the way that I did not listen to, like bringing in a consultant to work on the shooting. Towards the very end, this is what I did my work. I wasn't like a slacker, but any free time I could find, I discovered the concept of Huga at the time was really big, and I was like, what's this? And I was just obsessed on Pinterest and watching videos about it. There was something in my spirit that needed that kind of nurturing, that kind of calmness. That's what I was doing on my free time. I wasn't playing games. I wasn't obsessing over games. I was like searching up woolly socks. Come on now. But I'm glad eventually life came in and said, okay, well, we're trying to give you a hint, Jaffe, but we'll just shut you down. And it did. And I'm grateful. Very, very grateful. And I hope if you're getting signals and signs and hearing these little voices in your head that you start to listen, because at least in my case, it was telling me for a long time before I tuned in. Should have tuned in sooner. So in closing, though, let me give you one more little tip. Whether you've made a huge hit or a big failure, your game has brought joy to someone. The biggest hits I've had and the biggest flops I've had have fans. And it feels really good when you really allow that to come in. And I don't walk with it all the time. It's not with me all that often, but every now and then I'll stop and go, whatever I do in the future, I got to work with a team of really cool people, really talented people. It was very hard. It wasn't fun anywhere near as much as I wish it had been, but we got to do stuff that really made people's experiences here on Earth better. Even for a slight moment. Yesterday, as recording this, August 11th was yesterday. It has been amazing how fast time flies. 7 years since Robin Williams, the comedian, killed himself. And on that day, and I had never known this, one of our designers from the original God of War, a woman named Ashley Morgan, put on Facebook the story I'm about to tell you, and I did not know. And she said she was walking around E3 a couple of years after God of War had come out. And she was wearing like a God of War 2 development shirt or something that associated her with the brand as a creator of the brand. And Robin Williams was sort of known for being a gamer. He liked video games. And he went to E3, and he was at E3, and I guess he bumped into Ashley, and he saw that she had the shirt. And he was like, excuse me, did you work on the God of War games? And she says, yeah. And she says for not long, but, a handful of minutes, he just stopped and expressed, he's like, I love those games so much. And, they're so cool and they're so interesting. And I played them all and all this stuff. And it was just amazing to me. A guy who had given so much joy to the world, that in our own small little way that we in our work could give him back some relief and some happiness and some escape. I just think, as much as I bitch and complain about the industry, and there's a lot to complain about, absolutely, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful medium in which we all work, or we surround ourselves and we talk about. And yeah, I'm not one of those, I'm going to send you off on a good, whatever. You're not a baby. I'm just saying, think about that sometimes as well, because it's important. All the shit sometimes is worth it, because you get to do that for people, which is pretty cool. Well, there you go. That's the keynote for Digital Dragons. I hope you have a great next couple of days. I'll be on the internet looking up all the conferences and whatnot. Thank you seriously, you guys, for having me. I appreciate it. I appreciate you letting me get all this off my chest. It's cheaper than therapy, but therapy's important. Have a smoke. It is for you, baby. Yeah, hey, only one of you. That's right. You know who that's for. All right. Take it easy, everybody. Thank you for having me. Have a great Digital Dragon. See you soon.